Welcome back to Flashing Badger Painting. We are doing part 2 of painting Tyranid Hive Fleets. This time around we're looking at Hive Fleet Kronos, Gorgon, Hydra and a fourth mystery one from the Tyranid community. If you're a beginner painter, you get to grab your paints and follow along as I put together a step-by-step guide and list each of the paints and techniques as I go. If you're a more seasoned painter, a bit of a veteran, then you get to recline, kick back and enjoy painting Tyranid Hive Fleets Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. The first video I put together on how to paint Tyranid Hive Fleets had a lot of success for the channel and people have requested a part 2 with new Hive Fleets. I'd be mad if I didn't go back to the well to try and get some more attention. So if you were after Hive Fleets Leviathan, Kraken, Behemoth or my own custom one, that's all in video 1, but you can watch that after this one. I know you're here for the painting, so let's dive straight in. Red armor and black flesh. Both dark colours, so we begin by priming the whole model in black. You can use rattle can, airbrush or a paint-on primer. Airbrush is cheap and easy after you've forked out big on an airbrush setup. Rattle can is fast but expensive per can and brushing on is slow, so pick what best suits your situation. Corn red mixed with black in a 50-50 mix is the base layer. The more coats you put down, the brighter it becomes, so then I can already start on a transition here by my second coat not covering all the way into the same recess areas as the first coat. Corn red on its own for the next coats. Remember that just because I name a paint doesn't mean that you need this exact type. Look at what is in front of you and consider the colour and not the paint name. Many brands colour match or at least offer a similar colour that is only lacking an obscure Warhammer lore name. The armour will be a transition from dark red to light red as a gradient across the carapace. I want the recess areas and the beginning of the plates to be dark and the edge of the armour to be light. I see this as the armour slowly growing and the extremities are damaged and faded. Mephiston red is a brighter red next. Each time I place a layer down, I'm spraying less of the armour. If I overshoot by accident, I can go back to a slightly darker layer and fix it up. I'm showing how to paint one model here, but consider how you would practically use this method on batch painting a large number of models together and how much time you would save overall. I mix Troll Slayer Orange into the Mephiston Red to create the final layer. This time around I'm only spraying the last quarter or so and the colour shift should start to be evident now. As I switch back over to brush, I'm starting with the recess shadow areas. Corn red mixed with black and I'm searching for cracks, scratches and any other shadow areas in the armour and I'm painting thin lines. Troll Slayer Orange mixed with Evil Sun Scarlet. I've chosen to feather the armour to bring a bit more character to these carapace sections. I've thinned the paint down so that it isn't as strong and opaque and instead is quite soft and translucent. I find it looks better without an obvious pattern to the length of the feathered marks. I'm pulling the brush back towards the edge so that I can start sharp and end with more paint at the edge of the armour. Troll Slayer Orange on its own and I'm painting smaller marks inside the previous ones. Now you can see the effect and how even with these small marks, the carapace is coming to life with more character. Any talons, horns or spikes I want to be blue. I think a really bright contrast all the way from a black up to a light blue could look really cool here. In any of the defined Hive Fleets from within the codex, if you're sticking to the paints they use, I find that the talons are a great way for you to add your own creativity to the models. I think by having these nice blue talons and then maybe a dark base for the models, these could really pop out on the table. Stegadon Scale Green over the black prime for the first base colour. I'm painting the blues first so that when I spray the red after, I can push the edge of the blue back to where I want it as the two colours overlap. Thin layers so that I can leave the sections that connect to the head fainter with more black showing through. Sotek Green is my next layer. Both of these paint names include green in the title, but as you will see shortly, they end up looking like a vibrant blue. I would use the airbrush for larger horns and talons, and wet blend for anything smaller. But if you don't have an airbrush, that's fine. Just take your time and work back and forth with the colours, and even though it takes longer, it will likely look better. And you can even blend back and forth on the same talon if you want like a crystal look. Temple Guard Blue will be the brightest blue that I put through the airbrush. I tip the previous paint out, but I don't clean the cup. The paint mixing with the leftover of the previous colour actually helps them transition even smoother. Temple Guard mixed with Vallejo Off-White creates the first highlight colour. Picture what angle your model will be orientated when it's on its base, and paint your edge highlights in positions that will catch the light. Now these steps here I'm showing to you out of order deliberately, because when I go to airbrush, I will airbrush as many things as I can and do all the colours in one hit. That way I don't have to go upstairs to do brushwork and come back down and set up my airbrush again. So I originally had sprayed the blues first and then did the reds, but I want to chop and change it here so that I can keep them in coloured segments and do one thing at a time for you. I decided I wanted a few more highlights further up, so I've mixed some Sotek green to the previous mix and I'm painting the curves and edges around the chips. Off-White on its own as the brightest highlight and just a small amount at the very tips. You can stop there or add some more detail and character to your larger monsters. I figured this one has banged heads with a few pieces of power armor and I want to capture that. I'm picking out a few parts and adding some lines as scratches. Less is more, so aim not to overdo it. Then I use the lighter colour to highlight inside them in the parts closest to the edge. Black flesh is easy to paint, but I have one idea to add some extra character that I'm about to show you in a second. But first, I am painting black over the black prime because I believe they have a different finish to them, and I'm pretty sure I'm meant to, so here we are. You can highlight the black flesh with greys and it will look good, but I'm thinking we should add a small amount of blue to each layer to create a tie-in with the blue horns and talons. Eshin Grey mixed with Stegodon Scale Green as my first layer. If you find it's too light, then add a little black in to calm it down like I have. I thin the paints down and paint a couple of layers if needed to achieve a smoother finish. If speed is a consideration for you, then don't waste time on areas that are obscured or unlikely to be viewed. The highlights again should be appearing on the raised, prominent parts of the flesh. I'll paint one more layer, Sotek Green mixed with Eshin Grey as a thin highlight on the raised sections. I won't bore you with the tongue, teeth and eyes, so that we can jump ahead to see how our Hive Fleet Kronos turned out. A splinter fleet formed from Hive Fleet Leviathan to tackle the forces of chaos. Knowing their foe thrives in close combat, Kronos have adapted their abilities to engage their enemy at long range. If you enjoy artillery bugs like the Exocrine and shooty bugs like Hive Guard, then these are the skittering bugs for you. Now here is a fun looking scheme. Green flesh and bone coloured armour. An army of this scheme would have a unique look and would pair really well with a matching jungle base, or you could flip the script and go for a contrasting coloured base and I think it would stand out great. I'm priming with a lighter colour because trying to work back to white off a black prime is not fun at all. I've selected Wraithbone instead of white, but either would be fine. I'm using an airbrush for the armour sections to save time, but you can use a brush and just work your way with thin coats. I'm going from dark to light and Talon Sand is my base coat. This will act as the darkest colour before I come back later with some targeted shadows. My first layer is a 50-50 mix of Talon Sand and Ushabti Bone. I'm focusing the spray on half of the carapace on the areas that I want to be brighter. I've chosen to make the brightest parts being the tips of the horns and the backs of the panels that I will feather later. You don't mask off any areas because the airbrush provides some overspray which acts as a blend between this and our base colour. Ushabti bone is next, and now I'm spraying only around 1/4 to 1/3 of the armour. Here's how mine is looking so far, and it's a very subtle transition, but we're about to add some more darks and lights in the next step. For this scheme, I'm keeping the horns of the head in the same bone colour that I've already painted the rest of the armour. I think if you use like a matte black with some grey highlights for things like talons, that'd look pretty cool. But I want to avoid adding other colours like an orange, a pink or a red, because I think that'll clash with the green skin that I'm going for. Blues and purples would probably work, but they're also going to steal attention away from the other colours I have going on. Also, I'm thinking of keeping Gorgon as a more natural looking bug, so I want to keep it within that environment of the bone and the green colours. I'm now switching across to brush. For the recessed shadows, I'm mixing Catachan flesh with our base colour Talon sand. Other browns will be fine here, but this was the one I grabbed first. I'm painting this in the cracks, scratches and divots in the armour. Other bugs will have large armour plate panel lines and spikes sticking out. These will be other suitable places to paint the darker colours in. Again, I really like the feathered look on Tyranids, so I'll show you that now. If you don't want that, easy. Pick one of the same colours though and just edge highlight your panels and you're done. For the feathering, I'll be using 2 colours. I'm mixing Ushabti bone with Vallejo's off-white and thinning this down more than usual. The reason is that this colour will be the larger parts of the feathered pattern and I want them to be a softer transition and semi-transparent. With my brush, I'm working back towards the edge of the armour so that the majority of the paint ends at the edge and that I can start the feather sharp. I don't want the lines to be uniform, so I'm creating different lengths and widths as I work my way along. Once I've completed these, I'm onto Vallejo off-white on its own. Same technique, but I'm painting the inside of the previous markings and only around half of the space, so the previous colour works as a transition. There we go, the armour is complete. I know it's looking bland, but the flesh will bring the bug to life. Onto the skin now. It will end up being a brighter green, but I want to start dark and work my way lighter. Deathworld Forest or Deathguard Green as a base coat is suitable here. A larger brush, but I'm careful around those armour panels because I'll save time if I don't have to come back and tidy up all my mistakes. I'm mixing Contrast Plague Bearer flesh with Contrast Medium. The reason for this is it thins down how intense and dark the colour is. This is helping me to create a nice wash to paint over all of the skin. Contrast paints are great because you can paint them on directly without being too fancy. One tip I will give you though is that the paint dries after about 5 to 10 seconds, which is pretty quick. So if you're tinkering around with it too much and pushing it, you'll start to create those coffee stains that you see on models. I really like Elysian Green and I've been itching for an excuse to use it. So this is my first layer. I'm covering almost anything that isn't a recess and shadow. This colour is quite light, so expect to need a couple of thin coats to have it looking nice. If the paint spills into those shadow areas, you can let it dry and use the dark green that we still have on our wet palette to correct it shortly. A bright highlight to add some more character to our skin. Ogre and camo and a thin brush. Consider what way your model is being orientated on the base, so you don't waste time on parts that will be obscured from view, and also to ensure you're targeting the areas that will be catching the light. Tongue, teeth and eyes are all simple enough, so I'll bypass them each time, but here I'll show you how to create the slime and saliva effects that I use on my bugs. You will need some card, a toothpick, and Yoo-hoo glue. Now I've tried different kinds of Yoo-hoo glue, but the only one that works for me is the German version. It dries quickly, so you need to be set up and move fast. I put some drops on the card and then load up the toothpick. I then touch back and forth and drag the strain to different areas of the mouth, tongue, and teeth. You can even add more on some of your models if you like. On my horror specs, I went crazy and dragged it all around its horrific mouth. You can also add some drops of paint to change the colour of the saliva or the slime. If toxic warfare, speed, and the ability to adapt on the fly are more your style, then Hive Fleet Gorgon is for you. They cover the battlefield with clouds of toxic spores and begin sending waves of skittering bugs. Each subsequent wave can receive information through synaptic channels about the enemy's weaknesses and adapt themselves and their tactics to exploit their vulnerabilities. When I think of Hive Fleet Hydra, my mind goes straight to the Gene Stealers from the Space Hulk board game from the late 80s and early 90s. I want to recreate this look but in a darker scheme. Here's how I went. I want the flesh areas to be purple around the head and then the rest of the body will be blues. I'm starting with the base for the purple using a 50-50 mix of black and Nagaroth. Next is Cantor Blue mixed with black, and I'm not worried about the purple base drying because if they clash at the edges and wet blend, this will help sell the transition and do extra work for me. I like the blend, so I mix Nagaroth Night and Cantor Blue and push this colour along the seam between the blue and purple sections. Nagaroth Night on its own is my first layer. I'm painting all of the raised skin sections around the head, but not the neck. Then Cantor Blue on the neck flesh areas. Same principles as the previous Hive Fleet flesh areas, so use multiple thin coats if you need. Nagaroth Night mixed with Genestealer Purple creates the next highlight for the head. Prominent raised sections are being targeted and this will draw the viewer's attention to the head of the model. Genestealer Purple on its own for the final highlight, using it sparingly now. Same theory and technique for the blue neck. Calidor Sky is the next layer. You can see here how dark the model is looking compared to the old box art, and the way we would have painted these 20 years ago. I like it though. The dark shadows seem more ominous than cartoony. If you've decided to go with black as the carapace colour for your Tyranids, it can be hard to make it look exciting. I'm going to stick with the black because that's what the scheme is within the codex for Hydra, so I'm not going to be too wild. I think though that once you have this army laid out on the board, the skin will bring them to life, and if you want to be more vibrant, this is where you can get creative with your bases. A jungle theme or an ice planet theme would look awesome for these models. Eshin Grey mixed with black is my first layer on the armour. I work my way lighter with Eshin Grey on its own and then eventually to Mechanicus Standard Grey. I'm somewhere between the previous feathering technique and just wet blending. The first two layers didn't leave many, if any, gaps between brush strokes, but the light grey sees a return to thin, bright stripes for contrast. If you decide that you want a glossy finish to the armour, I'll show you how to achieve that on the next Hive Fleet. Teeth, tongue and eyes, and this bug is ready to lurk the hallways of an abandoned Space Hulk. True to how I remember them from my youth, Hydra present as a small and disinterested force, however know that their enemy have let their guard down and will promptly overrun them. If your goal is to outnumber and overwhelm your enemy, then Hydra is your Hive Fleet. Their rules reflect the law and you have the ability to increase their speed, and you receive bonuses if you outnumber your opponent. Keep them on the back foot as you throw problem after problem at them. In the last video, I provided you a step-by-step guide on how I paint my own Tyranid Hive Fleet. This time around though, I thought it'd be pretty cool to celebrate the creativity within the Tyranid community, and I'm going to pick another Hive Fleet that I think looks awesome, and then I'm going to try and emulate it and give you a guide to be able to paint it yourself. To the painter who created this amazing scheme and army, amazing work. I wanted to give you more of a prominent shout out, but I couldn't find your username. If you stumble across this video, then comment below so that you can receive more credit. I'm painting the armour in black and using multiple thin coats to have it looking smooth. I'm guessing the paints and creating an order with the goal not to use an airbrush, as I appreciate that many of us don't have access to one. The head has been primed with Wraithbone, but you could use white and achieve a similar look. I can see that the models were posted in 2017, long before contrast paints were available. I'll be using multiple contrast paints now in an attempt to create a fast and friendly method for painting your own. Apothecary White is first, and I'm applying this all over the skin. Remember that contrast dries quickly, so once it's down and you're happy, resist the urge to push it around anymore. The armour is Eshin Grey, feathered on, followed by Mechanicus Standard Grey. Same feathering technique as the last couple of models, so let's keep moving. The contrast has dried, so I'm back to painting the skin with a light grey. Painting the raised sections. When working with Games Workshop light greys and whites, they need a really good shake. I put 2 small glass beads in each pot to help agitate the paint. You can buy them in packs of about 100 really cheap on eBay. I mix in my brightest white and highlight the next layer. It will look dirty and nasty soon, but I want to start with a neat skin layer underneath. Back into the contrast paints. These paints are great, but some are very strong colours and they are designed to go on heavy and paint a model completely very fast. To combat this, I'm thinning them down with Contrast Technical Medium. I start with a 1:1 ratio, and I'm using Flesh Tearers Red all around the mouth to recreate that gruesome recently feasted look in the original. Now I add more contrast medium to the red to create a glaze. I'm painting this around the border of the red mouth to have a transition between the red and white so it doesn't end suddenly and look like lipstick. Fire Slayer Flesh mixed with the medium, and I'm painting this further back from the red. This is where I would expect dried blood to remain from earlier prey. What I love most about this Ancalagon scheme is how realistic and dark it is. Such a contrast from the cartoony way that I paint my own Tyranids. The first green is Militarum Green, and when mixed with contrast medium, I can create these organic fluids seeping from various glands of the beast. If the other colours haven't dried yet, then I take the opportunity to blend some of them in. Plaguebearer Flesh is another gross looking green, and I'm working in the previous green sections, but again I'm going for an older stain feel. The sections still feel a little too defined, so I'm tying them in a little by creating some red and brown streaks amongst the greens. In the original Hive Fleet, the teeth are really bright and prominent despite the disgusting mouth. To recreate this, I'm painting the teeth with Ushabti bone first, as I find this paints over the red quite well, and then I'm painting with the brighter off-white as a highlight. This certainly draws more attention to the menacing mouth. For the eyes, I will probably use blue or yellow, however I've already used those colours today, so I couldn't miss the opportunity to paint them in magenta and give this huge bug a gruesome Joker feel. To create the shiny armour, I'm using some gloss. If I apply it directly, it will be over the top and thick, like I'm sealing a coffee table. So I'm thinning the gloss down with thinner and then painting it on. It will still be shiny, but it won't have a thick finish to it. Whilst I have the gloss out, I'm adding some across the mouth and teeth to show that the blood is fresh. How did I go? I think it looks alright, but I could have pushed the grim dark even further. A grey prime instead of bone for the flesh could work, and even go in heavier with some dark green and brown contrast paints. I'm happy though, and I hope that it gave you some extra ideas on creating your own or emulating something that you see online. You'll have to let me know below which of these 4 has been your favourite and what you would add or remove from that scheme to make it easier and look more impressive. 10th edition is apparently just around the corner, and rumours are circulating that Tyranids will feature in the launch. I hope that this video has given you some ideas, options and different techniques on how to paint Tyranids, whether you're about to dive in and start your own army or if you're already underway. In only 6 short months, the channel has rocketed past 2,000 subscribers, and each day it's continuing to grow. This is a result of your support and also your interest in the channel. So honestly, thank you so much. And please continue to let me know down below what you'd like to see more of, or if you have any cool ideas for videos. I have a feeling that the next video is going to be a pretty special one for us. I know that because I've already filmed it. So if you haven't already, please consider the notification bell down below so that I can see you on the next one. Catch you then.